Hello everyone, welcome to the Data Dig. This is our capstone presentation brought to you by Cameron Rogers, Jose Marrero, Dylan Lima, Juan Hurtado, and Justice Walcott. The dataset we'll be using is the CIC IDS 2017, and the playbook is the NIST SP 800-61 Revision 3. My name is Dylan Lima. I'll be talking about the dataset and playbook. As I mentioned before, we're using the CIC IDS 2017, which was created by the University of Brunswick. This dataset gave us the realistic network traffic that was collected over a full week in a controlled lab environment. Monday represented the normal baseline traffic, while later days, such as Thursday, gave us more of the attacks, such as things like brute force, web attacks, command and control activity, and the DDoS traffics. To guide our response progress, we use the NIST SP 800-61 Revision 3. This is a cybersecurity incident response playbook. So instead of just looking at the data set and saying like, this stuff is suspicious, we use the playbook to think like a real life stock team. And this really helped us analyze a static network in a more real world life environment where we could see things in a professional way. And overall, this CIC IDS 2017 gave us the evidence, and the playbook gave us the actual process to work together and create a real world environment on how to tackle this assignment.
Hi, my name is Justice Walcott. I'll be going over slides 3 and 4. And for this slide, we analyzed the data set our team used for tools in the layer detection workflow. We started with Wireshark for deep packet inspection. This let us examine raw network traffic and follow TCP streams to confirm malicious behavior at the packet level. Next, Zeek processed the PCAP files and generated structured logs, specifically HTTP and connection logs, which gave us a higher level view of network behavior, like spotting high frequency requests or unusual connection durations. From there, we fed our data into Splunk, where we ran queries to detect anomalies at scale, things like traffic spikes from a single IP or repeated failed authentication attempts. Finally, everything we confirmed got documented into Catalyst, our case management system, where each incident was formally tracked with evidence, artifacts, and a full investigation lifecycle. So the flow was raw packets in Wireshark, structured logs in Zeek, detection in Splunk, and documentation in Catalyst. And for our next slide, we have our identified assets. So now let's talk about what systems were actually involved. The key victim was this first victim, 192.168.10.8. This is the compromised host. It had a reverse shell planted on it and was used as a launch pad for further attacks on the internal network. As you can see, for our main target server, we have 192.168.10.50. That was the main target server. As I said, it ran the vulnerable web application and was also the target of SSH brute force attack on port 22. And on the attacker side, we have it right here. It was the external C2 server that received the reverse shell connection from the compromised host. And 172.16.01 is where the SQL injection attack originated from. The web application itself was hosted on Ubuntu server running DVWA, damn vulnerable web app, which was intentionally misconfigured at the part of this dataset. And finally, the Cisco network infrastructure, switches, and firewalls routed all of this traffic. A key finding was that the inadequate egress filtering allowed both the C2 communication and attack traffic to pass through undetected.
This is the impact analysis and triage. For incident 1720, reverse shell, the impact was for remote access granted to an attacker. Post exploitation reconnaissance was observed. It was labeled as critical. Indicator compromise was the IP address 205.174.165.173. There's persistent TCP packets going bidirectionally, indicating communication back and forth. For incident 2253, the brute force, there was 127 attempts to log in at port 22 with no successful login. That was labeled as a high vulnerability. Another indicator of compromise was another IP, followed by the IP of the machine that was being attacked at port 22. For incident 644, the SQL injection, there is a database enumeration attempt with user credentials at risk. Below is the actual SQL payload, the union select payloads. That's just labeled as a high vulnerability.
Hello, my name is Jose Marrero. Today I'm gonna be presenting threat intelligence and the recommended remediation. So for threat intelligence, on the slide we overall summarize the incident 2 and 3. For where incident 002 was the SSH brute force, where the attacker host was 192.168.10.8, targeting 192.168.10.50 on port 22. We saw there were 127 SSH attempts with 37 failed authentication. This suggests that the login attack used multiple source ports. This maps to MITRE technique T1100 brute force. We detected in Splunk by looking for SSH logs where the source IP count was greater than 10, and Wireshark supported this. We repeated SYN packets and retransmissions. And for incident 3, the attack was an SQL injection against a DBWA web application. The attacker host was 172.16.01, targeting 192.168.10.50 at the endpoint of /db/vulnerabilities/SQL. The payloads include patterns like union select and 1 equals 1, reference to information schema, which are common signs of SQL injection. The likely goal was to enumerate a database and extract user credentials. The map to MITRE technique T1190 exploit public-facing application. We confirmed the activity by reviewing the HTTP stream in Wireshark and finding SQL injections attempt inside the RE. And now for the recommended remediation. So we would, for example, block C2 traffic by majorly blocking any suspicious IP addresses, the suspicious IP address listed at the perimeter firewall. We will also block outbound non-standard ports like port 444 unless they're specifically approved. Enable egress filtering or DNS sinkhole into sub communication with command and control the net for the SSH brute force activity. We will harden SSH access by using tools such as fail to ban or rate limiting on port 22. But this will require a SSH key-based authentication. Disable the password authorization, and as well as restrict SSH access to.
So within case management, we use Catalyst to list out our 3 incidents, which is reverse shell C2 activity, SQL injection attempts against the web app, and SSH brute force attack detection. And they were all high severity. So in conclusion, we used the CIC IDS 2017 dataset. We found 3 incidents confirmed. We used 3 different tools to do it, which was Splunk, Zeek, and Wireshark, and then we labeled everything in Catalyst, and we used the NIST playbook. So key takeaways that we have was encrypted C2 traffic can bypass payload levels inspection. Automated brute force is fast and requires rate limiting, and unvalidated inputs remain the #1 web vulnerability.